Thank you very much. Members of the board, members of the community, good evening. I am approaching my first 100 days as the proud superintendent of the Poudre School District, and I can't tell you how excited I am to be here with all of you this evening. As I've had an opportunity over the last 3.5 months to learn about our community, I think a term that kind of comes to mind that I'll start talking and using more often is, what is our district's brand promise? And what I mean by that is who are we? What do we stand for? What are we willing to not negotiate? And I know those are complex questions, but I feel really confident that as I've had an opportunity to visit almost, I think, 45 of our schools and meet with many members of our community, I find some areas where I think we're finding some agreement. There's a lot of pride in this community, and one of these key areas that I believe as we think about what our PSD priorities are as a leadership team in partnership with the people that we serve in our classrooms, in partnership with families like many of you who are here tonight who send your most prized possessions to us, is that you don't expect just your children to go through our system after 13 years of their precious lives. You expect them to graduate, and you expect them to graduate with various options. And we're hopeful that in working together, that hope's not our strategy, but that those options are meaningful to both the child, our student, the young adult, and our family. The baseline can't be anymore that they walk across the stage, they shake the superintendent or their principal's hands, and we say good luck. Navigating this world, the complexity of our society today, is going to require our students to feel connected to themselves, to other people, to their interests, to higher ed opportunities, whether that's a 4-year school, a 2-year school, it may be entering the workforce directly, it may be even a proud member of serving our military. But ultimately, the goal that I have in working in partnership with people is to ensure that all of our children, not just some of them, can walk across that stage after 13 years of being with us in this system, or if not longer, and have an opportunity to articulate to themselves as well as to us those options. That doesn't happen by accident, it happens by design. And the work that is in front of us that is going to need to be a multi-year effort is, to me, going to be to double down on 2 key areas of improvement in the system. One that you've heard me talk about prior, which is literacy. And literacy, it belongs everywhere. It's not just in our pre-K through our grade 3. It exists in our high school classrooms. It exists in our middle school classrooms. It exists in our health classrooms, our science and social studies, and yes, as a former math teacher, our math classrooms too. In order for our children to graduate with options, they need to be literate, not just functioning and illiterate. And in figuring out and stumbling upon those options, they need to be connected. And that's beginning to bubble up as a system-wide priority across this district. I would also share that literacy isn't enough either. That children feeling whole and feeling well and loving who they are, feeling that they are enough matters. It matters a great deal. And those of you who are here and who are listening at home or on this dais know that deeply. We have to double down on wellness. We have to double down on mental health supports and realize that those 2 conditions together do provide our children with the greatest opportunity to graduate with options. I'm really proud of this board's commitment to continuing to go deeper on our core business, which is learning and teaching. Later on this evening, we'll hear a presentation specifically through the lens of our Career and Innovations Department, because we must have strong workforce development options available to all our children. And that means partnering with our families, partnering with the business community, ensuring that our children have options in our backyard, not just somewhere else. As I get a chance to live here and with my family, I'm learning to love this community deeply. And I'm understanding why there's so much power in this community. It's a result of the options that are in our own backyard. And that's not just with jobs and businesses, that's with the colleges and higher ed opportunities too. So you'll have an opportunity to hear a report and an update that's not just about our Futures Lab, that I'm incredibly proud of and visited last week. If you had a chance to drive by, I was flying drones in the backyard of the school and having really deep conversations with people. It seems on the surface level, children in the back of a school flying drones, well, what is that all about? And I spoke to one child, and he was immediately plugged into the real estate industry, using his drone knowledge to be able to actually make money today. Yet other families and children that were engaged in the military opportunities and pathways of what that was looking like. And the entire classroom was headed to Denver International Airport on Friday to partner with United Airlines to fly their 787 simulator. So looking at all of these pathways, what stood out to me is that the students felt seen, they felt visible. and they felt connected to knowing what was next. That was a result of the opportunities that this district provides. That's going to require us to engage the business community thoughtfully. As I shared with you in our dinner session, I have the intent beginning next week to begin hosting quarterly meetings with our business community to make sure that we're playing offense with articulating what our needs, our vision is, and beginning to organize ourselves as partners deeply to make sure that those who are interested and have the capacity and the will, that we're finding a way to make sure that we're bringing down the walls in our system to connect them with our students. And that may not just be with their money. That may be with their time, their ideas, their energy, and their resources, and their feedback and their thoughts. Over the last 2 weeks, I've had the opportunity to visit with many members of this community. And all the things that I just shared with you, they don't start in high school. They start the moment, somebody in one of our families decides to trust their 3 or 4-year-old to come into one of our pre-K classrooms. I talk a lot about acceleration of learning and belonging and how much that matters in this system. I went to Shepherdson Elementary School, met with Principal Wayne Thorns and his team last week, and I could tell you, if you want to know what accelerate learning looks like in this community, go knock on Shepherdson Elementary's front door. Whether you were the dance teacher in the school who was providing, dance teachers and music teachers provide some of the best specific feedback to students in this district. We have so much to learn from them. They know how to make children grow in real time based upon what they're hearing, what they're seeing, and what they're telling people. I had an opportunity to walk into a kindergarten classroom that was teaching standards that were on a first grade and second grade level and doing it in a way that was seamless and flawless because she was connecting her math lesson to her literacy lesson. She was connecting it to what the children read. She was connecting it to these various themes that have very deep academic vocabulary. I walked into a third grade math classroom, same school, and the level that third graders were talking about the communicative property of math. Think about it. Can we remember when we talked about the communicative property in math, and were we in third grade? It was happening at Shepherdson Elementary School. But it wasn't just the language. It was her little nuanced things that she was doing in her classroom that if you weren't paying attention, you may have missed it. Where she'd give children 2 to 3 minutes to think to themselves and write down their thoughts and their ideas. Seems so simple. And then spend the next 2 to 3 minutes, turn and talk to your partners at your table, getting people to express how they feel, talking and modeling civil discourse, engaging in deep conversation, and then beginning to share that out. It existed, and I could go on to talk about 5 more teachers in that school. I had an opportunity later in that week with Miss Zamora to go to Centennial High School. And I'm going to tell you, my first 100 days was one of the most profound experiences of my career, not just my time here. Because what I learned there is that sometimes our traditional pathways to accelerate learning and ensure students have options, we don't always get that right the first time, and sometimes not even the second time. And having a chance to partner with Principal Mike Roberts and his crew, we did about empathy interviews, didn't we, Ms. Zamora, with about 40 students to just talk about their stories, how they ended up there, what they were getting out of the school, what made them think PSD was valuable. I could have had a lot of tissues that day. There are people in this community, maybe people in this room that are hurting a lot, that don't feel seen, they don't feel visible, they don't feel understood, and we're struggling with that. That's a real problem, not just in our classrooms, it's a real problem sometimes in this boardroom. That school is saving lives. Without that school and the children, it was their voice. It was them stepping into themselves to be able to articulate in their power what went wrong, but what got it right, and how they found it at that school. It was significantly profound. Engaging them with the community is the next step, and how we make sure that they have job opportunities post-graduation. I had an opportunity as well to meet with Miss Joni Baker and her ACE leadership team last week. Could have had a lot of tissues around that table too. Whether it was talking about our bus drivers, the current state of our paraprofessionals in our system, our nutrition services workers, or our custodians, we're short-staffed in many ways across this system. We're fragile. I want to be honest and sincere about that. We got people working double time, triple time, doing 2, 3, 4 jobs. And what you would expect is they were coming in and saying, well, we need a raise. They didn't show up asking for a raise. They showed up, I just want to be seen. Do you see me? Do you understand what the challenges are And are you committed to my excellence? Because I care about this system. What I heard from them is they're deeply, and I hear that from all the associations, I hear that from everybody. The takeaway here is whether I'm talking to children in this community or I'm talking to employees, I think ultimately, whether it's even the people in this room who are going to speak a little bit later today, we all want the same thing. We want to be seen, we want to be visible, and we want to be understood. And that's really messy when we don't always agree. I want to close tonight because one of the questions that I ask employees many times, and not all the time, but a lot of times when I'm engaging with them is, what can this district do to better serve you? You'd be surprised the reaction that I get. A lot of times. Sometimes like, whoa, wait, the superintendent just asked me that question. I went to O'Day Elementary School, another impressive school in our portfolio, and I had a chance to walk into one of the autism classrooms that are serving children with autism. And there was a group of teachers, and I asked them that question, and they're like, that question requires me to think a little bit about this and to be thoughtful. And what I want to share is that our integrated services staff members across the school, it's hard when, as a superintendent, you don't want to single out one group over another, which is why I try to spread my words and wealth as much as I possibly can around all the various people who are pitching in and leaning in. But we know that our integrated services staff are serving, in most instances, the most vulnerable children and some of the most vulnerable families in our community. And in some instances, the lack of paraprofessionals, the lack of supports is compounding the types of supports when we know they need more supports. And so if you're an integrated service worker in this district and you're listening in right now, I want you to know that we see you. I want you to know that you're valuable like every other employee in this system. And I want you to know on behalf of not just the families of the people that you serve, but the people who are in this district and working in partnership with you, we simply couldn't do what we do without you. And I know that doesn't go far enough for people to experience joy tomorrow morning when they show up at work, but I'm hopeful the more that we can start to talk and acknowledge and see people with light and positivity, the greater likelihood we can stick together through these really difficult, challenging times. There's probably never been a more complex situation in our lives to be educators and leaders in this system, and I'm just grateful that I'm here being able to partner with these people, with all of you, to serve these people well. And I'm just really, really grateful for the opportunity to speak with all of you tonight. So thank you.